Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Common Council for the City of Richmond, Indiana for September 18th, 2023. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and in a prayer by Councilor Doug Goss. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God, we pray that you would give us the wisdom to know that by serving others, we serve you. Give us patience, openness to compromise, and the wisdom to lead and to solve the issues that are before us. We also pray for our citizens, the ones that we are called to serve, that they may realize your grace and your peace in their life. Yes. We pray for their prosperity and well-being. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Goss. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Doug Goss.
Here.
Lucinda Wright.
Present.
Bill Engel.
Here.
Jeff Kappa.
Here.
Here.
Gary Turner.
Here.
Jane Bungalow.
Here.
John Oler.
Here.
Larry Parker.
Here.
We have everyone present. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting for August the 21st, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Locke.
if there's no additions or corrections to the minutes of August 21st, make a motion they be approved as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have presentations or petitions, memorials, or complaints, introductions, motions, and resolutions. Is Mr. Kramer in the audience? Mr. Kramer, please come forward, please. Please give us your full name and address.
The name is Barry Kramer, 24 South 21st Street here in Richmond.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. It was my privilege to serve on the City of Richmond's Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Planning Advisory Committee that terminated its work about 8 years ago, and we prepared this master plan for the city. I later came to the understanding that that master plan was an essential step probably in getting the grant money that we had for the loop. And at the same time, I was thrilled that we were working on a master plan because I came here in 1995 bringing my bicycle with me, hoping to bicycle as much as I could for basic transportation. I found it more challenging than I expected, and so I began advocating for better accommodations here in the city. So it must have been that advocacy that got me onto this committee, because I was not a head of a department, did not work for the city, was not part of a civic organization that were part of that. It looked to me like I was the sole citizen member of that. And I was pleased to do it, as I said. And seeing that the loop that's going in, it's like, well, this served a purpose, but it also could be doing more for us. It seems to have been sitting on the shelf. There were 17 miles of low-hanging fruit that were identified by the consultants that worked with us, basically putting some lanes down, putting down shared stencils showing shared space for bicyclists and automobiles. We call those sharrows. Mm-hmm. And relatively low-cost items compared to the multi-millions that you could spend on building a great facility. So I've been considering how to bring this back to the city's attention. Had it in mind some time ago, then COVID got in the way, then other things interfered. And then all of a sudden, this NDOT is planning a major construction project here out on I-70, and I went to the meetings looking at that through my lenses of a bicyclist. And when I responded to them, I CC'd all of you on that email. And all except for you, Mr. Parker, because I did not find an email address for you. I do have a hard copy for you, if you would like to have that. And for anybody who would like a hard copy yet this evening, I have copies for all of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I am not too encouraged that my voice speaking to NDOT will carry much weight. I had tried to advocate similarly when Chester Boulevard was being designed, and they did put in sidewalks at that point. It was clear that that was needed. I sort of pointed out to the NDOT officials, hey, the sidewalk is going to become a de facto bicycle path. You ought to just plan for it now so it can be used safely and be more efficient for, you know, what we need. It went nowhere as best I can tell. So when this possibility came along and I said, look, you're designing this grand interchange out there at I-70 and I-40. You've got sidewalks planned. How about widening those so that, you know, we know the bicyclists are going to use that. Make it wider so that it's more accessible and safer for everyone. Again, I'm not too encouraged that they will listen, which is why I'm engaging you. I don't know what strings you have that you can pull. I don't know how you express your voices to NDOT. I did want to point out that we do have plans in this master plan to go out East Main Street, National Road East, with some kind of a facility. What's being built out there is a generational opportunity. If we go out there 10 years with something of our own, and by the way, that's a state route, we ought to be thinking about them putting that in at their expense, not ours. But the interchange out there ought to be consistent with whatever may come later. If it's not done now, we'll wait another 30 or 40 years. So having included all of you in that email, I could anticipate that some of you had questions. So that was my main reason for wanting to come by this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kramer? None? Okay, Mr. Kramer, thank you for coming tonight and explaining that to us. You say you have reached out and sent that documentation to the state, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I did that. I was, they've had their deadline already.
Okay.
But I presume that if the city were to offer some guidance, that maybe they would still listen. And they haven't presented their final designs yet. They're still working on that.
Have you made contact with your local state representative about this?
No, I have not. I honestly don't see how that pertains, but
Well, seeing it is involving NDOT, getting in contact with your state representative here locally that represents you as a constituent would probably be someone you would like to make contact with and explain this to, because they will have better contact with those people at that state level. That's why I'm suggesting that you make contact with him as well.
okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is communications from the mayor. The mayor's not here this evening, so we'll move on. Next is the report of the Board of Public Works and Safety. The minutes of the August 24th and August 31st meeting were included in our packets. Does anyone have any questions or comments about those? Hearing none. Okay. Next on the agenda would be report from department heads or standing committees, special committees, and organizations. We do not have any of those, nor do we have any miscellaneous business. So we'll now move to ordinances on first reading.
Mr. President, I would
Mr.
move
Turner.
to suspend the rules and read by title only the following ordinances. Ordinance 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 43, and 44-2023, again, to be read by title only.
Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. All in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance number 31, 2023, an appropriation ordinance to be known as the 2024 budget.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening,
Council-
Emily. How are you?
Good evening, council members. I'm here before you once again presenting on a budget. Ordinance 31, 2023 is the 2024 budget ordinance. This budget was advertised on Gateway as required by the Department of Local Government Finance on September 7th, and this was as the budget was presented at Committee of the Whole. This advertisement provided the 10-day in advance publication requirement for public hearing, which would need to be held this evening. The budget cannot be formally voted on until 10 days following tonight's public hearing, which is why we did that in that way. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards.
First, just want to make sure everybody on council does understand that we will have the public hearing this evening. However, we cannot vote on the budget this evening. We have to wait 10 days before we can do that. So everyone does understand that, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Emily as it regards to 31-2023?
Mr. President,
Mr. Oler?
Emily, have there been any changes since we last looked at it, because you've updated it to the
No.
LGF?
No,
So that the file we have a link to on that shared document, that's still accurate
correct.
if we open that tonight?
Yeah, and I was asked by someone before the meeting, all the budget information, though it's not exact of what you guys receive, it's public record on Gateway, and that website is gateway.ifionline.org.
Could you email that to us, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
That would be great.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so we're into the first reading. Do we have anything else from the council?
Hearing none, Mr. President, I would make a motion to suspend the rules and advance ordinance 31-2023 to second reading, read by title only.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move to second reading. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we have any further questions from council members? All right, we will move into the public hearing. We'd like to call for speakers in support of the ordinance. Anyone in support of the ordinance, please come forward. Anyone in support of the ordinance, please come forward. All right, we'll move now to call for speakers in opposition to the ordinance or measure. Calling for speakers that are in opposition to the ordinance or the measure. All right. Call for a motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Engel.
before we do a motion, for, not that anybody ever reads the budget, but if anybody, and if anybody in the public now wants to look at it and comment on it, they cannot. Is that correct?
If we close public hearing, they wouldn't be able to comment on it.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
That is correct. And we have in the past established some precedent for reopening a public hearing, but with this particular ordinance, the requirements that it be passed 10 days subsequent to the hearing being held, that really wouldn't be applicable. And I also do want to note, Mr. President, that if this is engrossed this evening, I know it won't be voted on tonight, but if it is engrossed, no changes can be made.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
There you go.
Thank
Does
you.
everyone understand that part? It cannot be engrossed. If it is, then changes cannot be made.
Correct. And it could be engrossed at the next meeting and then subsequently voted on.
And I also want to make sure, I think everybody is aware, because I've said this multiple times, but once the budget is advertised on Gateway, it can only be decreased. It cannot be increased.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then we will table this till the 10-day period, and then we'll move forward at that point. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next ordinance.
Ordinance number 32, 2023, an appropriation ordinance fixing the annual compensation of all elected city officials for 2024.
Okay,
Ordinance
Go ahead. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Ordinance 32, 2023 is a salary ordinance setting the salary for all elected officials. The proposed salaries include a 4% pay increase for all RP&L board salaries. The city did not give any pay increases for 2024.
I'm going to have this ordinance go to the Finance Committee. Next ordinance, please.
Ordinance number 33, 2023, an appropriation ordinance to be known as the 2024 salary ordinance.
Ordinance 33, 2023 is a salary ordinance setting the salaries for civilian employees. This ordinance includes both union and non-union employees. All union position salaries are set at levels agreed upon in the applicable collective bargaining agreements. There will be no pay increases for non-union employees in 2024.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, I'll be forwarding this ordinance to the Finance Committee.
Ordinance number 34, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the annual compensation and benefits of Richmond police officers.
Ordinance 34, 2023 sets the base salary for ranks within the Richmond Police Department. At this time, an agreement has not been reached with the collective bargaining unit. Accordingly, there are no pay increases proposed in this ordinance. Once an agreement is reached, we will come back for an amendment.
Thank you. Any questions on this particular ordinance? Hearing none, I will forward that to the Finance Committee as well.
Ordinance number 35, 2023, an appropriation ordinance to be known as the Sanitary District 2024 salary ordinance.
Ordinance 35, 2023 is a salary ordinance for the Richmond Sanitary District. This ordinance includes both union and non-union employees. There will be no pay increase for non-union employees in 2024, and the union salaries will be based on the collective bargaining agreements, which are, just for record, steps towards the market rate as we did last year with civilians.
Thank you. Any questions on this particular ordinance? Hearing none, we will forward that to the Finance Committee as well.
Ordinance number 36, 2023, an ordinance authorizing the annual compensation and benefits of Richmond firefighters.
Ordinance 36, 2023 sets the base salary for ranks within the Richmond Fire Department. The proposed base salaries were agreed upon in the 2023 collective bargaining agreement at an increase of 1.5% for 2024.
Thank you. Any questions on this ordinance? Hearing none, we will forward that to the Finance Committee as well. Thank you, Emily.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 43, 2023, a special ordinance amending the zoning map for a certain parcel from outdoor commercial district to high-intensity industrial district, zero production court.
Good evening.
Evening, everyone.
Good
Dustin
evening.
Purvis, Infrastructure and Development. Ordinance 43 is a zoning map amendment request for a property located at the southeast corner of West Industries and North Salisbury Road. The petitioner is Storage of America, and they're requesting that the property be rezoned from outdoor commercial to high-intensity industrial so that they can build a self-storage facility on the property. So this evening, we're just requesting that the petition be referred to the Advisory Plan Commission for their meeting next Wednesday, September 27th, for public hearing. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. President, I have a
Mr. Oler.
question. Why heavy industrial district instead of just general commercial?
So these kinds of warehouse storage facilities are only permitted in I-1 and I-2 zoning
Okay.
districts. So this is just,
That's the answer. I just don't know the UDO well enough. Thank you.
We will forward that. Thank you.
Ordinance number 44, an appropriation ordinance authorizing the submittal, acceptance, and appropriation of a grant from Indiana Landmark HPC.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Audrey Shake, and I'm the grant administrator for the City of Richmond. Ordinance 44-2023 is an appropriation ordinance for the Richmond Historic Preservation Commission, authorizing the submittal, acceptance, and appropriation of a grant from Indiana Humanities and Indiana Landmarks. The City of Richmond is preparing to submit an application on or before the September 30th deadline to Indiana Humanities and Indiana Landmarks for $3,000 to fund historic preservation workshops intended to educate the public on how to repair, replace, and preserve elements of historic homes and buildings. This project requires 100% local match. The city will fund 100% match as cash in kind from budgeted infrastructure and development funding in the 2023 budget. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Oler.
on paragraph 3, Audrey, normally on these, we state the dollar amount. This one, for some reason, doesn't. So I move that we amend this ordinance to state the $3,000 will be used as a local match, exact amount.
Yes.
Yes, it doesn't state that in the ordinance, though, unlike section paragraph 3. Normally in paragraph 3, we state the actual amount. So that's what I'm asking for, is to amend it to state that $3,000 amount as usual.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend that ordinance. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Got it. Okay, any other questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Parker?
cash in kind, what, explain that for me, please?
I would actually need Emily's help with explaining that. I'm still figuring it out as well.
That's all right. So should we receive $3,000, the city would then match $3,000. So it's,
So in kind does not mean anything other than cash.
we can't get like, me donating something instead of cash. No. Yeah, it's cash.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. Okay,
Mr. President,
Mr. Turner.
I would move that we amend the rule, that we advance this ordinance to second reading to be read by title only.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move this ordinance to second reading by title only. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Ordinance number 44, 2023, an appropriation ordinance authorizing the submittal, acceptance, and appropriation of a grant from Indiana Landmarks, HPC.
Okay, we've already had a report basically, but does anybody have any further questions about this ordinance before we move forward? Okay, hearing none, we'll open up the public hearing. I'd like to call for speakers in support of the ordinance. Evening.
Good evening. My name is Tina Conti. I am current president of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I am here in support of this ordinance because I see that it is a great need in our community to have outreach to our fellow community members to educate them in the ways that they can restore and preserve areas of their home, and hopefully that will lead into advanced pride in home ownership.
Thank you. Hey, do we have any other speakers in support of the ordinance? Hearing none, now we will call for speakers in opposition to the measure or the ordinance. Again, we are calling for speakers in opposition to the ordinance or the measure.
Move for engrossment.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to engross. All in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Call the question.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Doug Goss,
Aye.
Cinda Wright,
Aye.
Bill Engel,
Aye.
Jeff Locke,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
Jane Bumbelow,
Aye.
Ron Oler,
Aye.
Larry Parker,
Aye.
Jeff Kappa.
Aye.
All in favor.
All right. We will now move to ordinances on second reading.
Ordinance number 29, 2023, an appropriation ordinance amending the 2023 budget, and this is for the airport.
Rodney did not come back this evening. If you guys recall, he presented on this at the last meeting, but I'm happy to do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Emily. Does anyone have any questions about 29, 2023?
Thank you.
Hearing none, thank you. We'll now open this up for a public hearing. Call for speakers in support of the ordinance 29, 2023. And calling for speakers in support of the ordinance. Seeing none, we will now move for calling for speakers in opposition to the measure or the ordinance. Calling for speakers in opposition to the ordinance.
Move for engrossment.
Second.
Okay, the motion for engrossment and second, all in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Call the question.
Second.
Madam Clerk? Okay.
Ed Goss,
Aye.
Lucinda Wright,
Aye.
Bill Engel,
Aye.
Jeff Locke,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
Jane Bumblew,
Aye.
Ron Oler,
Aye.
Larry Parker,
Aye.
and Jeff Kappa.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 40, 2023, a special ordinance creating Chapter 63 of the Richmond City Code for the establishment of designated refreshment areas subject to findings, regulations, and guidelines, also known as DORA.
Okay, we open this up for questions by the council. We have a report from the Safety Committee.
Mr. President, the Public Safety Committee met last week over this ordinance and ordinance 41 both, and we ended up with more questions than answers, so we want to spend some more time on this. And the Depot District is okay with their not having this ordinance in place by the time of Oktoberfest. They'll go do the standard beer garden this year.
Okay, we will then table ordinance 40, 2023 and 41, 2023 for further diligence with the committee and those who are asking for the ordinance. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have no unfinished business. Next will be call for adjournment.
So
Call
moved.
for adjournment.
Motion is second. All in favor, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye.